Do you want to know all the best things to see in Paris? Stay tuned for today's podcast where I share with you an incredible trip that I just returned from, where we started in Paris, went to Bordeaux, France, and then we ended in San Sebastian, Spain. My guest today on the podcast is Janice Rantanen, who's the Director of Lasting Impressions at Candelaria Design. Janice spent literally the last 4 years planning this magnificent trip. And today on the podcast, we are going to reveal all the awesome experiences we had and all the behind the scenes experiences that you're going to want to hear all about. So welcome to the podcast, and I hope you enjoy hearing from Janice Rantanen right here. Well, Janice, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today. We're going to talk all things France.
Sounds great to me, Renee. I'm very happy to be here. Merci.
Well, so fun to get to travel with you this summer. So you were the person who planned our entire Candelaria Design Tour to France, and we ended up in San Sebastian, Spain, yes, which is a great little ending for our trip. So I want to share with all of the viewers, all the listeners, some of the awesome things that we got to do so that others who are traveling to France can maybe follow in some of our footsteps. So I want to go back to the very beginning. When did you start planning all of this?
Well, this has been a long time coming, as Mark will tell you. We started the planning process, honestly, about 4 years ago. And then one thing after another would happen, one obstacle after another. And then COVID was in there. And then we had transportation issues because there was a soccer tournament in Paris and there wouldn't be any public transportation. So it was a long time in the making. And, you know, I know that you know this. This was my first tour to curate. It was also the first tour I had ever been on. So it was, there was a bit of angst and anxiety along the way, but in the end, it turned out great.
It was a great trip. Well, I know you well, and I know that you are very invested in the details, making the details very special, but also following up on the details, and you're really thorough in the things that you think about. But how I know the trip kind of got started is you first went out and scouted a lot of the locations. So how was the scouting trip?
I did. The scouting trip was marvelous. It's long days. You hit a lot of spots. I went with a list of, a want list, so to speak, of lodging, dining. So you go and you experience those things. Mm-hmm. Shopping, excursions.
That's a really good excuse. You had to go shopping to experience the shopping.
Yes.
Okay, good. And so the shopping was to your liking, so that's why we did it? Okay.
I can't complain about the shopping in Paris, and I think that you can attest to that.
I did very well.
Yes, you did you succeeded at that very, very well. So we just went along the way. I went with a travel companion, and we tried to live the pre-tour scouting as if it were to be the tour. Would this work for our travelers? Would there be interest? Is there enough area for us to be comfortable? You know, you just go with a little list and take it off. And some things that you thought would be great are like maybe not the best choice. And then other happy situations come up along the way.
Yeah. So we did a lot of really special things. And I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I certainly had my favorites. What were some of the things when you did the scouting tour that you said, oh gosh, this is iconic. We have to do this on the France trip?
Well, dining, of course, especially in Paris, is really a wonderful experience. And you'll remember the dinner we had at Chez Julienne,
yes,
which was a very, very charming little Parisian restaurant that was in a former bakery. And we had our own little space upstairs. It was like a little bird's nest, and the windows were open to the streets of Paris. Mm-hmm. And we ate there twice, actually, on the pre-tour. And that experience really spoke to me. The ambiance I thought was wonderful. It was true Paris, and you were just up from the Seine. So that really was a must-do. And then also Palais Garnier, the opera.
Yes.
That was a really wonderful tour. And again, that ticked a lot of boxes. The architecture, of course. We are Candelaria Design.
Yes.
The history. And then we had a little kind of behind the scenes, I should say under the scenes, we were able to go into the basement and see the rigging for the props and such. So those two things were really quite special.
So that was probably one of my most favorite things. So also for everybody to know, that was the Paris Opera House, and we toured the behind the scenes. And I learned so many interesting things. First, we were traveling with George from Contessa Stone.
Yes.
And so being a stone guy, he was just blown away about all the carvings as you enter that main hall and that whole reception area. And then you found for us an incredible guide who told us the whole story of the Paris Opera House. So we were there for a couple of hours and got to see all the public facing spaces. And then we went behind the scenes, and literally we went down below the scenes. We went several stories down to the absolute bottom of the theater, the basement, I guess. And I never understood the whole thing about Phantom of the Opera. I've seen Phantom of the Opera 4 times. And for anybody who's seen that show, you know that it ends with the Phantom and Christine climbing down a ladder, and they end up in this little boat. And every single time I watch the show, I think, okay, well, I must not have been listening, or I wasn't paying attention to something. How are they on a little lake? And so I've never solved that for myself. Where was that lake? Why were they on water? This doesn't make any sense. The music's so good. Who cares? Let it go. So while we were down there in the basement, she said, okay, well, remember, the Phantom of the Opera is about the Paris Opera House. And here's the ladder, and that the Opera House is actually built on a lake.
Yes, correct.
So do you remember why they were explaining the lake? Something about the stage?
Oh gosh, that detail is escaping me. You're putting me on the spot. I am not remembering actually why that was the case.
She was saying something about the water and balancing the stage, but this palace was built, or the Palais was built so long ago that I still did not ultimately understand the architecture of it. But the part that just wowed me so much is now Phantom of the Opera actually makes sense. And anybody that I have told about that, they have all been wowed. And so it was fun to see that in person. So they took us all the way down there, which it was very tight spaces.
Yes, and you could smell the water, and you could feel the humidity, and you could see it. You could look down into that one little abyss down there, and you could see the water. So it really was a wonderful tour. We're going to go again in 2027. I'll toss that in there for anyone listening. And I have another idea in mind that will still take us to the Palais Garnier, but we will see other behind the scenes. We'll have a different experience on that one, and I think you would really like this one.
Oh, very fun.
I'll put that out there as a teaser.
I'm going to say, I know we all wanted to see your performance after getting wowed. I don't think anybody knew or expected how great that was going to be.
No. And we lucked out. If you remember, we got into the actual theater where guests would sit to watch a performance. And the following day was opening day for the opera, and it was Giselle was opening. And they just happened to go on a lunch break, and our guide was able to sneak us in there. And you could sit as though you were watching a performance. And for anyone that hasn't seen Palais Garnier in the theater, it's very opulent. It's very gilded. It's all red velvet. And you can just sit there and just imagine what it's like for the performance. And we would see the backdrops and the props and the scenery were going up and down, and the orchestra was there, and the instruments were there. And it really was, it was
amazing.
The perfect storm of wonderfulness to be able to get into the theater.
It was exquisite. That was just, I think that was probably one of my favorite parts about the trip. So you mentioned about Chez Julien. What was wonderful about that is, Mark is such a big fan of walking. And I love to walk when I travel, but I think all of us walked home from dinner that night through the streets of Paris. And it was great because there was a light rain going. So everything was glistening with water, and we're walking by all the amazing landmarks. And so that was really wonderful too.
We try to, this goes back to curating the tour, we try to be very aware of the distance of things, because we do want to walk. In any city, whether it's Paris or New York or London, you want to walk. You see the architecture. You're immersed in the lifestyle. You see the people that live there. You look in the little windows of a little bistro or a patisserie. So our tours are very robust in walking. And you just discover things that you would have never thought you would discover. It's just these little happy circumstances that you get.
So many amazing things. And the other thing is, you were very good about warning us and reminding us to wear very comfortable shoes.
Yes.
And so, I look at that as an American as some sort of a compromise, that I'm not wearing a certain kind of shoe as I'm out in Paris. If you look around the people of Paris are already wearing comfortable shoes, stylish shoes, leather shoes, beautiful shoes, but people are not wearing silly, ridiculous shoes as they walk through the city. And so I felt very much a part of the local kind of fashion vibe by having
Yep.
shoes that were comfortable. They weren't horrible Nikes or anything like that. You know, that we all had rubber soled shoes, though, that helped us go, you know, anywhere from 15,000 to 25,000 steps.
Yes.
In, you know, one of our longer days. So it was really fun and it was absolutely beautiful. There were so many great things to see. We went, share a little bit about the concert that we saw.
Well, that was at Saint-Chapelle, which is this beautiful, beautiful Gothic cathedral, and you are completely immersed in some of the most beautiful stained glass in the world. And it was a beautiful violin concert. That was also something that we scouted. When we went initially, we were treated to the Four Seasons. That was the performance. But you're in this, it's a little jewel box, really, sitting in there watching this beautiful performance, and the lights go down. And it really takes you back to the 1800s in Paris and what it would feel like to be fortunate enough to attend something like this. That was something else that we were able to walk to, and then you walk home, and you're there on the island. Notre Dame is at the opposite end of the island of Saint-Chapelle, and it's just really breathtaking. I mean, don't you find yourself reflecting back on kind of day by day or experience by experience? And Paris is just, it's truly magical.
It was magical. It was very emotional. So many of the different things that we did. So it wasn't, when you think about a tour, when you're traveling, you think about seeing the sights. What I feel like we did is we experienced the experiences. And so from food to music to art to architecture, we were immersed in a cultural experience of the city that maybe, and it felt very specific. Like you had curated the tour to bring in, certainly it's an architecturally very important city and architecturally interesting, but that we were also experiencing things that brought us into that local vibe.
Very much so. And that's something that we strive for. I know it's something that Mark and Evelyn, when they do the Italy and the Spain tours, which is where we started with this platform within Candelaria Design, that is something we always strive for, is to really curate these wonderful little artisanal type experiences, not your touristy things. I really tried to do so much research to find just something just a little off that our travelers would not even know existed.
Right.
And I think that, you know, it really says something for who we are as a company, because all of our tours are that way.
Yeah.
And, you know, going forth, when we do this again in 2027, yes, we'll go to Paris, but we'll have different experiences.
Yes. Well, and then you reserved for us the final night in Paris was a beautiful dinner on a riverboat on the Seine.
Yes.
And it was an Alain Ducasse wonderful dinner. And that was exquisite. Again, Michelin is reigns supreme in France. And so to have a Michelin star experience, which we had a couple Michelin experiences on this trip, was on brand for this trip, I thought.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed that. For those that aren't familiar, Alain Ducasse is the most highly decorated Michelin star chef in France that alive. And this boat was custom made for Alain Ducasse. It's an electric boat. It's not a gas boat. So number one, you have the quietness, and you don't have the gas fumes.
Yeah.
So we had a really quiet, just lovely dinner to begin. And it was raining that day. Remember, we had some drizzle to get down there. And then all of a sudden you realize, because everyone becomes a family on these tours, and everyone's talking, and all of a sudden you see the Eiffel Towers going by you and the beautiful iconic buildings, and you're moving. So you're moving along the Seine as you're dining, and the boat goes up and you see all these beautiful architectural significant buildings, and then you turn around, and we returned right to the base of the Eiffel Tower right as it started to twinkle.
Yeah.
So that really was a very, very memorable experience.
It was very memorable, and to the point that we don't do touristy things. So it would be touristy to go to the Eiffel Tower, or to go up in the tour or whatever. And that's a wonderful experience too.
Yes.
It's a different experience. There's a lot of crowds there, and it's maybe not as elevated. So what we got is that Eiffel Tower experience, but in a very, very elevated way.
Yes.
There wasn't anybody on this electric boat that was not, I mean, almost barge-like. I mean, it was very big. That didn't have to get out of their seat and go out on the deck in the outside and in the rain to go experience the Eiffel Tower. And so it was very special. It was beautiful. Yeah,
And,
it was so
that's
lovely.
another thing we strive for. There are wonderful touristy experiences in any city, really. And so we had some travelers that arrived early, so you could do do the Louvre or go to the top of the Eiffel Tower. We have to be sensitive to how we spend our time on these excursions. So I did suggest, go a few days earlier, do these things at your own pace. And then the group, we all met in Paris. You went early, you went to England. We had a couple of travelers who landed in Paris, a couple of days in advance, and you kind of do your own thing. But the tour is also structured such that certainly we have our curated excursions that we're going to do each day, but we've also built in time so that our travelers can do whatever they wish to do, whether it's shopping or a patisserie or sitting in a little bistro or just simply having a rest or sitting along the Seine and watching the world go by. So that's another skill, is striking that balance of activity, but also allowing private, quiet time for our travelers.
And I thought it was perfectly balanced too. I had just enough time to fill up a brand new suitcase shopping and got to experience all the great little areas around there. And then also one of the days where everybody had an open day to go do what they wanted to do, went with Mark and Isabel to Versailles, which I had never seen before. So that was fun.
Yes.
This trip I called the Tour of Ceilings. And I even started just photographing ceilings everywhere and made it like a game, name that ceiling, because Paris is about looking up. I mean, that was what I was doing the whole time. In Versailles, you tour Versailles just looking up, because every single ceiling is more magnificent than the next. And when we were in the Hall of Mirrors in Versailles, that same sort of design was echoed again in the Palais. And so we got to see that. We were looking up, and when we were at Sainte-Chapelle, ceilings, every place we went, ceilings, ceilings, ceilings. And, it was fun to talk to Mark about that, how all those ceilings influence the architecture that he's inspired by and that the entire team is drawing for clients. And we all know that Candelaria Design is known for incredible ceilings.
Definitely. That's one of Mark's favorite talking points, is always look up, always look up.
Yes.
And Paris as well, and all of Europe really also look down, because the floors are magnificent.
Oh, yes.
The stone and the tile and the terrazzo, it's just a complete feast for the eyes. It's a complete feast for your heart and your soul and your eyes. It's just magnificent.
Yeah, it was just amazing, the detail. And so many of the things that we were seeing, everybody just kept asking the same question. How did they make this? How did they do this? Could you still do it today? How would you do it today?
Yeah.
If you think about even the expense of trying to do any of this today. I mean, this is stuff that is so off the charts. This is not getting done anymore, this level of detail. So the ceilings, I thought, were extraordinary, and it was just fun to see all that old world. I mean, the old world French design, and through, all the different Louis, and gosh, it was really so interesting to see how it was such the epicenter of design. And you could feel the epicenter of fashion too, but back to design, you could absolutely feel that.
Absolutely. Their attention to detail, I feel, in France is really exquisite. And that goes to how they wrap an eclair for you.
Yeah.
Or I bought just a beautiful little scarf, and the tissue was lovely. The little label that they put on it was beautiful. The ribbon is exquisite. Everything is such attention to detail.
Yes.
And we don't see that here. We go too fast.
Yeah, definitely a much more slowed pace. And we really saw that when we got to Spain too. So we did a food tour one day, which was a walking food tour. And I love eating local food whenever I go someplace. And I just love eating. I mean, it almost became funny at some point. I mean, we did not have enough food on this trip.
Exactly.
It was incredible, and we just always had the ability to eat more. And this food tour was lovely because it was curating some of the most incredible things from Paris, but then also some boutique stories that were international in their flavor. We went to the Jewish deli, which was incredible, and then learned about the chocolatiers, and we had an exquisite croissant, and so it was so good.
It
I
is.
could do that tour almost every day. It was so good.
And I know you had a love affair going with the pain au chocolat each morning.
I
as
did.
well.
I managed. My goal. So when you started talking about this trip about 4 years ago, I think you remember that I was one of the first ones to say, "Oh, I'm going."
Absolutely.
So I have been on this tour since the very, very beginning. And anybody who I've said, "Oh, I'm going to be going to Paris," I said, "And I'm going to have a pain au chocolat every single day."
Yep.
And I made it. How many days were we gone? 14, 15 days?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Every single day. Every single day.
And fortunately, you were able to carry that streak even in Spain because it was
Yes.
part of what was offered for our breakfast in Spain, and when we continued on to Bordeaux. So yeah,
It was so fun. I enjoyed it so much, and that was exactly what I wanted to have. So
There you
I
go.
missed it. I missed it when I got back. But the food tour was amazing, and then we just did so many great things. And then traveling by train.
Yes.
In France or in Spain is a wonderful thing, and so convenient the way they do it. So then we were off to Bordeaux.
Yeah, we were off to Bordeaux. We had a private chateau, and this tour we collaborated with an individual here in Scottsdale that really brought another layer to our experience. And we collaborated with Chef Brent Menke and his wife Benedict, and they own the McBrasserie on McCormick Ranch. And Brent's restaurant has a French flair to it. He is passionate about food and wine. So we were fortunate to have this walking encyclopedia with us wherever we were, whether we
Literally
were,
a walking encyclopedia.
yes,
Yeah.
we're dining together. Brent just was so gracious with sharing, and his wife Benedict is born in Provence. So she was fluent in French, which really added to our experience.
Yeah.
And they had experience with this chateau in Bordeaux. So we had 4 nights in the chateau, which was in the middle of a vineyard. And the chateau is owned by a brother and sister. And this is the first year that they have really resurrected the grape harvest. So we were able to see in the winery. It was so charming. We had sheep on the grounds. We had a darling little dog, and Brent cooked for us every night. And when I say cooked for us, it was multi-course.
Yeah.
It was beautiful food. It was just completely marvelous. But it brought us to the dining table every night in this chateau, and it was 4 stories, accessible by a very tiny little
winding staircase.
windy little spiral staircase. It was classic chateau castle material. But we would all come together every night at the dining table, and we'd have this wonderful meal and this fabulous wine, and it was such a wonderful bonding experience. The camaraderie was superb. Mark always says it's the people that make the party, and boy, we sure struck that box on this tour because everybody just really had a marvelous time. And I know we miss one another, and we're all gathering again in 2 weeks at the studio, and we're going to have a little party and more food and wine and talk about our memories and see one another again.
Yes, and I feel like this group is going to kind of stick together because on some future tours I'm hearing a lot of the same names.
Well, I'm hoping that this is the case because, as I said, next year we have other tours on board. We have a domestic tour to Oregon next year in June. We have Italy and Spain, and so we definitely want to do France again in 2027. And boy, it would be great to have the same band of merry travelers together.
Well, we know we can do it.
I know.
Nobody gave up on the food.
No.
So when Brent was cooking downstairs, it was incredible. The first night he made this salad niçoise, and Erica, Dickey, and I were just joking. There were 2 huge salads, and it was beautiful, and it was colorful, and it was light, and it was delicious. And this is my favorite salad in the entire world. So I thought, all right, well, I'll have some. I'll have some more. Eric and I just kept pushing it back and forth. We're like, did we like have 5 servings of that salad? We think we did. And it was exquisite. I could eat that exact salad every single day. It was just so good. And then he did some amazing branzino that night. And then he just cooked up a storm the whole time we were there, which was incredible. So that was really fun.
He did. And we also had an experience one night where he made beef, but it was cooked over an open fire out in the back. I'll call it backyard, but it's just, beautiful. You're in the vineyards.
The estate land.
But it was cooked over the vines, the old vines that they had pulled out in the vineyard. And that was the wood source to cook our meal that night. So it just, we had such marvelous experiences, not due to anything I did. These were things that happenstance that come up along the way. When you have this group of marvelous people, you have people that have their own skill sets, whether it's cooking or interior design, magazines. It was just a really marvelous group of people. So we had some great experiences there in Bordeaux as well. We had two exquisite lunches. One was at Les Sources de Caudalie, which was just, the resort itself was just given 3 Michelin keys, I do believe, just last week when they announced it in France. The ambiance at this property, that was one of my very favorite experiences. Yes. Just charming ambiance. We had this beautiful lunch, and then we walked through the vines. We went over to the vineyard. We had this beautiful tour. The owner was there. Again, we got lucky that he was there.
Yeah.
So it's all these wonderful little happenstances that come about as you travel.
Oh, the lunches were so good. And everything was just so picturesque and scenic. It just felt like it was really, in some ways, almost one castle to another of the things that we got to see. So Bordeaux was fun. And then we also did a food tour in Bordeaux as well with a guide who I feel like really helped me understand. This is the first time I really started understanding the difference between Burgundian wines and Bordeaux wines and Bordelais wines, as Brent told me that's what they're called.
Yeah.
And so that was really interesting because now I feel like I've got these shelves, that I can put some of this information and start building and understanding, the kind of things that I like. But Bordeaux was beautiful. And so that was really fun. And then we got in our vans and we wrapped up this incredible trip in San Sebastian,
We did.
which is a foodie mecca. So
Absolutely. They're the most Michelin-starred restaurants in the world are in San Sebastian. So as Renee said, we got in our vans. We started our trek. We had 2 vans. Everybody was nice, cozy, comfortable. We drove for about 2 hours, and this was not planned, but we went to Biarritz. We had this great lunch in Biarritz. We went to the market, the seafood market. And again, everybody had time to walk around and wander and discover Biarritz, which is this beautiful, very elegant seaside town still in France. It broke up the drive. Great lunch. It was an absolutely spectacular sunny day that day. And then we continued our way to San Sebastian, and we stayed right on the bay at Hotel Londres, which Mark has stayed at numerous times.
Yeah.
He's very familiar with that property, as is Brent. And we all had rooms that looked out into the bay. A couple of our travelers were able to swim. And it was just marvelous. It was a departure from what we had experienced in France. Now you're in a different country, you're in a different culture.
Yes.
And this is an element that Mark likes to always add to our tours, is that we have 3 stops, 3 different cities that we experience. So we were on to another just really marvelous. We did a food tour that night. We learned about pinchos that night. And again, it was just one experience after another that was completely delightful.
Yes, incredible. And the food was amazing again.
It was.
And the shopping was lovely. And it was kind of funny. I was traveling with Lucia, who speaks a little bit of French. So I was kind of leaning on her to manage the conversation. As soon as we got to Spain, she's like, "Girl, this is you." I'm like, "Oh, I've only got a little bit of Spanish." And by the way, the Spanish I know seems to work a lot better in Mexico than it does in Spain, which everybody knows because it's Catalan. But all of a sudden it started coming back to me. I'm like, oh, I do actually have a little vocabulary here, which is really fun to get through. But the shopping was fun and all the food was fun again. And so the trip ended with an exquisite meal at Candelaria. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Accalari, that is another Michelin-starred restaurant. I believe that's a triple Michelin star. It's perched out over the water. And I was not at that particular dinner, but I think you had 14 courses for that dinner that night. And each course, I know, was a painting, just a beautiful, beautiful painting. And the artistry, you really learn, and you come away from any visit to Europe, I think, when you're speaking of the food, these are really artists. These chefs are artists. And it's not only the chef, but it's their support sous chefs and all that have to have this tremendous, tremendous skill.
Yeah.
So that's really, unless you continue to go on our tours, that is kind of a once-in-a-lifetime experience there at Accalari.
Yes.
It's a formal evening, so everyone dresses up that night, which is great because, you have to go casual. It's function over fashion when you go on these tours.
Yeah.
And yet that night and a couple of nights in France, we dress up. And you feel great, and you're lifting your wine glasses to one another, and it's such a memorable experience.
Yes, it was incredible. I had to miss the last night too, but I saw all the photos. I was in the text chain of hearing from everybody about how incredible, and being the foodie that I am, that was painful to miss. But the night before, I went to a restaurant called Muka. That was another Michelin star restaurant, not as dramatic as Accalari, but was really great to go there. So that was really fun. So I have a question for you. So I feel like I want to wrap up this podcast with, first of all, a thank you to you for all of your diligence and creativity and all the love that you put into planning the trip. It was amazing. It was perfection. It really was. And I know little things will happen, but the traveler experience, it could have been better.
Well, that
wouldn't have changed a thing.
I take that as a tremendous compliment coming from you, Renee, because I know you travel. I know your attention to detail, and you live an inspiring, beautiful life. I mean, that's your mantra, really. So I thank you for that. I take that to heart, and I appreciate that.
So great. So great.
Thank you.
So a couple little travel tips. I love to be user friendly, and there's a couple things that I learned on this trip. Are there any little tips or tricks that you would share with people for traveling abroad? Even silly little things of packing or any of that. What are some of yours?
Well, number one, be organized and plan in advance. And if you're not someone that does research, do research.
Yeah.
And do research in advance, because you're only going to help yourself and enhance your own experience. So start researching where you're going so that when you get there and you have free time, you have these wonderful things that you can do. Travel light. Try to do one suitcase. I know we had gals on this trip. It really is hard, but you'll make it easier on yourself because you're only hauling one big rolly and probably a carry-on. So pack light, and as I said, go for function over fashion. Just be comfortable. Other than that, it's just the usual. Make sure you've planned to have your adapters with you and your converters with you, and you've got money in advance. It will make your experience go much, much smoother.
Yes, I totally agree with that. So I did have one suitcase and one tote. So I was pleased with that because when you get on and off these trains, different countries work different ways. Now, France is generous. They stop the train and they wait. You have plenty of time to get on the train. Spain is a different case. If you're traveling to Spain, that train comes in, comes out. It's so fast, and it's just a mob of people getting on. And getting on and off the train with too much luggage is difficult and problematic. And so for some of the other travel I was doing this year, I would say, again, to echo, pack as light as you can.
Yeah.
I ended up shopping in both places, so I had issues. But I learned something really cool. And it's called Send My Bag. And so when I was in Spain, I needed something like this, and I wasn't quite able to activate it. Well, I had a friend who left the trip early who volunteered to take one of my bags. So that was just a gracious thing, but you can't count on that to happen.
Right.
So I pre-set up the last stop to have my bag picked up. So I left the hotel, went to the airport, and my bag was just sitting there with all its proper labels. And it got picked up, and it made it back to my house 3 days later.
Perfect.
And so it was lovely to not have to manage multiple bags going through customs and the airport and all of that. And so that was one of my little tips that worked out great. And then throw air tags and everything.
Definitely.
So you know where your stuff is if it's going to
Definitely.
be separated from you. But that was a great thing. But you're right. Comfortable shoes.
Yeah.
Pack light.
Yeah.
You will love yourself.
You
follow
will.
that advice.
We were fortunate. We had two fellows who
Oh my
gave us their
goodness.
muscles and really helped with baggage and packing it into the vans and getting us on the trains. But you can't assume that you're going to have that. And
Right.
our tours are marvelous, but you need to haul your own luggage.
Well, you have to be responsible for yourself. And that was
Yes.
kind of what my thought was. But they were overly generous to just step in and help out.
Yes.
That was above and beyond.
Yeah.
And so that was super
That
lovely.
really helped. But that harkens back to everybody becomes friends, everyone becomes family,
Yeah.
and you watch out for one another. You really do.
Yeah.
And you do what needs to be done to make the experience better for each and every person that's a part of the tour.
Yeah, it's great. So now that France is done, what's next?
Well, the last couple of years, we've added a domestic tour to the Willamette Valley in Oregon, which, as you know, you've been on that tour.
It's-
Yes,
it's a great
yes.
tour.
So that's a beautiful wine tour. That's coming up next year, 2026 in June, and I know that we do have some availability on that tour. If you just contact us at the studio, we can give you the details on that. Our Italy tour next year, I do believe, is sold out. And then, of course, that brings us to 2027. We'll do France again. Spain may be on the books, but we're also pursuing another domestic tour, perhaps to the Hudson River Valley, which is a beautiful. It's not even up and coming anymore; it's there.
Yes.
So that is something that's on our radar to pursue to see if that ticks all of our travel boxes, and I do believe it does. So,
Lovely.
check our website. We have a tab there just for our Candelaria tours, and hopefully, if you haven't been on a tour, you'll come and join us.
I just want to make a plug for these tours. So one of the things, so as you mentioned, earlier in the podcast, so I went to England first before France. And so I was there for a couple of days, and Lucia and I were managing ourselves, managing the trains, managing the whole thing. As soon as we got to France, our first thought was, we don't have to think anymore. And, it's really a gift and a luxury to be on a trip where it's thoughtfully curated,
Yes.
but then someone says, just be down in the lobby at 8:15, we're leaving. That's all you have to know is just where to be, and then the rest of it unfolds.
Exactly.
The directions of where to go, how to get there, tickets have been bought, the whole thing. That is a luxury that is truly priceless.
Well, thank you. We pride ourselves on that as well. And I just kept thinking, if I were a traveler on a Candelaria tour, what would my expectation be? And I have high expectations.
Yeah.
And so I did strive to try and make it as easy on our travelers as possible and as enjoyable. We had a couple of travelers that had never been to Europe. So we have a nice array of European experienced travelers. But you just think to yourself, how would I want to have this fold out and just make it as easy as possible, as effortless and as enjoyable as possible.
It was. And you know what? When you don't have to do all the thinking, it is more fun.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, it's like being the passenger in a car.
Yes.
I'd love to take a ride.
Yes. Well, thank you for joining us on our inaugural Tour de France, as we call it.
Yeah. Well, I know you learned a lot on this tour, and I'm sure the next one's going to be even better. I hope to see you there.
Thank you. I hope you'll be on the tour 2027, everyone. Come and join us.
Thanks for being on the pod today.
Thank you, Renee. Merci.
Well, that's the pod. Thanks for joining me this week. Please make sure to subscribe to the podcast and hit the bell so that you never miss an episode. And for more about Iconic Life, please go to iconiclife.com. Until next time, I'm Renee D. We'll see you soon.